Right, I'm going to introduce Melissa starting now. So, welcome, Melissa, and thank you for joining our Inner Wheel Connect session and to share your journey that speaks to the power of resilience, kindness, and community. I'm interested to hear not only what you have achieved, but your story behind it. It must have taken courage and determination to turn a rundown pub donated by the Invercargill Licensing Trust into a charity hospital. You established the Southern Charity Hospital in in 2019, was that right?
That's correct.
Yes, with the aim of constructing a charity hospital to provide colonoscopies, day surgery, and dental services following your late husband's cancer diagnosis and experiences with treatment delays. So, construction began on the project in 2021 and was completed in April last year. And we all know it's modelled on the Canterbury Charity Hospital. A little bit about Melissa. She's an experienced human resources consultant with over 20 years working in management, human resources, and as a health and safety specialist. Is that correct, Melissa?
It is, yeah.
Right, and you are known throughout Southland and I think New Zealand and possibly the world for your advocacy and community leadership and campaigning for improved cancer care in New Zealand. Following the illness and loss of your husband Blair in 2019, you chose to turn grief into action. So it's a story about courage, community, and the power of ordinary people working together. It's also a story about kindness, small acts that help carry us through times of crisis, and about what happens when people choose action over despair. Now, I know that Melissa has received not one, but several accolades for her contributions to the community and healthcare. So she's received the member of the New Zealand Order of Merit, which is the MNZM, for services to charitable fundraising and community leadership. Also, the Companion of the King's Service Order for her services, and was the semi-finalist for the Kiwi New Zealander of the Year award for her advocacy work. There's more. A recipient of the Companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit in the New Year's Honours. These recognitions highlight her significant impact on cancer treatment and community health initiatives in New Zealand. Melissa, you are a woman who knows how to rally people, build trust, and turn frustration into action. And it's your energy we need to inspire our membership-focused organisation. So welcome, Melissa, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting me along. I'm very excited to speak to you. My youngest daughter, Lily, has recently moved to your neck of the woods in the Canterbury region in a little place near Hines, where she works in a daycare in Ashburton, which she's studying teaching. So always giving me weather reports that she boasts are far better than the Southland weather of home. So she is part of your local community now.
Yes.
So I'm just going to see if the technology works, but I've got a few pictures that and my screen share is disabled, but if someone is able to let me screen share, I can show you some pictures as I talk along that I've collated for you for tonight.
Can you do that, Sue? Please.
I don't think I can screen share if it's on Melissa's computer.
Just in the settings, you just need to, just like
Oh,
where
allow
you
you.
just allow me. Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone know how to do that?
Jill does.
Yes, Sue or and Claire, if you go down where it says share,
Yep.
and you'll need to turn it on because none of us can.
Right. Share. Host tools for share. Who can share? All participants. That should work.
Yeah, why not?
Well, it was only host or all, so who can share when someone else is sharing? Only the host. So, yep, one participant can share at a time and all participants can share. So you should be able to share. Hopefully.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And while you're
Learning
at it,
something
Sue,
every day.
can you spotlight Melissa too, so we'll be able to see her screen?
And would you?
There we go. Oh no, she's screen sharing. That's right.
There we go.
Oh, hello.
Hello, you're right, Melissa.
But could you hear me while I was sharing the screen?
No.
Oh, okay. There must be an audio setting. Hold on a second. I'll just have a little look here. Otherwise, I'll just put them up at the end.
Or else, if we get Claire, can you make Melissa a co-host so that she can have controls to be able to use her microphone and share her screen? That might work for you, Melissa.
Thank you. I'll try. Oh, yes, it's just giving me a new notification. I'll try that again. I won't wait so long to see if you can't hear me. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can hear you now, yes.
And can you
Yes.
see the screen okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, we'll try that. And hopefully I've got the settings right now. Okay. Just double checking that you can hear me now that I've got the screen on.
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
So this is a little journey to share with you what my family and I have been through in the last few years. And it all centers around my late husband's cancer diagnosis. In 2018, Leo was aged 38, and unfortunately, he was diagnosed with.
You can take us with you on the radio. Sorry. Magic Talk.
With terminal bowel cancer at age 38. He had no symptoms prior to being diagnosed, and he had just had a double knee replacement and went to the ED post that surgery feeling a little breathless and thinking that he may had some blood clots from the surgery. And unfortunately, he was diagnosed with stage 4 terminal colorectal cancer. He had an advanced form that showed no symptoms until it was too late. I arrived at the ED after he'd been diagnosed, and a very kind ED doctor explained to me that my handsome, healthy 38-year-old husband was terminally ill and potentially didn't have long to live. We were admitted into the hospital, and where they ran some further tests and got his breathing under control. I just cried for the first 24 hours and really couldn't process how this healthy young man was going to die. And we were given a diagnosis of 6 to 8 weeks due to the advanced disease in his liver and lungs. We were discharged from the hospital 2 days later, and we were told we would receive an urgent oncology appointment. And urgent to me, I was thinking we would be going that day or within a couple of days. We were quite distressed to receive a letter to say that, unfortunately, Southern District Health Board was operating outside the Ministry of Health's timeframes for cancer patients, and that Blair wouldn't be seen to 16 to 18 weeks, which obviously with a 4 to 6 week time period to live, effectively he would die before seeing the medical oncologist. Blair and I approached things quite differently with that diagnosis. He said that he wanted to create a bucket list of the things that he could achieve with the 6 to 8 weeks that he had remaining, and he set about creating that bucket list. And one of the things that he most wanted to do was to, he'd been coaching a number of local rugby teams in the community, and he wanted to be able to take a group of children that he had promised on a rugby trip to Australia for that trip with these young children who were not ours. When you've got 6 to 8 weeks to live, taking 26 other children to a trip to Australia with that precious time seemed absolutely crazy to me. But he was determined that he'd made that commitment to those young boys that he'd been coaching. And in order to achieve that, he explained to me there was $80,000 worth of fundraising remaining, and that he would need me to get on the fundraising committee to tick that off. And I thought to myself, that's a lot of cheese rolls that I'm going to have to make to raise $80,000 to get these young boys to Australia. On Blair's bucket list, he also wanted to play one game of rugby with his friends now that his new knees no longer needed to last 15 years. So another item he added to the bucket list was playing a game of rugby. On our 15-year wedding anniversary, Blair was a bit of a romantic, and he had wanted to renew our vows. And I told him that I thought it was a waste of money having another wedding when we'd already had one 15 years earlier. And he said that he felt that still being married in today's society and happy and in love was something to be celebrated with. A lot of people, unfortunately, their marriage is not lasting for a long time. So he added that to the bucket list and described to me that he was now pulling the cancer card on me, and I couldn't say no. So we were to renew our wedding vows. So the bucket list was just piling up with activities and things that he wanted to tick off in that 6 to 8 weeks that he had remaining. He was so positive and accepted his diagnosis far more easily than myself and my daughters. And we were super fortunate that in the first week after we received the news of the long wait to receive the medical oncology appointment, that we had medical insurance and were able to go privately to Professor Chris Jackson in Dunedin. And at the first meeting, all Blair wanted to understand, his one question for Chris was what would happen to someone who didn't have money or didn't have medical insurance. And Chris explained that in his time working in the Southern District Health Board, many people faced that terrible situation of receiving a cancer diagnosis and were unable to access care before they actually died, and that every year a number of people died on the waiting list, depending where they lived in New Zealand and whether or not they had money. And that for Southern, the access to cancer care was particularly distressed due to staffing numbers and workforce issues for patients to be seen on time. our entire 3-hour drive back to Winton, to our farm, Blair just kept talking to me about how this was crazy, that in a country like New Zealand, people would die on a waiting list for cancer treatment, not even being given a fighting chance. And he was really bothered by the inequity that, because we were fortunate to have medical insurance, that meant that for those who didn't or didn't have the means of paying, that they would effectively die on the list. We went back for Blair's first treatment to commence chemo, which was for prolonging his life. The cancer treatment that Blair required was funded in 19 other comparable OECD countries, but in New Zealand it was not funded. And we had to pay $65,000 for the drug and then $4,000 per week for administration of the drug. And our medical insurance that we'd had since we were 22 years old as a young married couple was Southern Cross, which was considered to be the main provider of medical insurance at the time, did not cover any cancer treatments that were not funded by Pharmac, which seemed absolutely outrageous to me. And this was just one of many challenges that we found in the health system. When we learnt about the number of drugs that were not funded in New Zealand compared to the other comparable countries, in particular focusing on Australia, at the time of Blair's illness, there were 96 cancer drugs approved in Australia that were not approved in New Zealand. And we met many New Zealanders who were doing crowdfunding, mortgaging homes, or having to leave the country to go to Australia to seek that same treatment. If we had relocated to Australia, Blair's treatment would have cost $50 per month as New Zealanders living in Australia versus what we were paying of the total cost of that one drug plus the $4,000 administration. We also were required to travel 3 hours each way every week to receive the treatment and to pay for the accommodation because we weren't in the public system. We were unable to access that drug. We found this super sad, meeting other young families who were unable to privately fund the treatment that had curative possibilities for them had they had the money for the drug. So Blair again spent his second meeting with Chris Jackson asking Chris how he could help change that position. And Chris said that he'd been trying since he'd come back from the UK, from the cancer hospitals over there, to change the New Zealand health system, and that he'd tried advocacy, he'd tried presentations, and that Blair should use his precious few weeks just focusing on his own health. But Blair didn't take that advice. He said to Chris, but I want to help so that this doesn't happen for other New Zealanders. And Chris said, well, we have a conference coming up. It's the first New Zealand conference in over 15 years where cancer specialists from around New Zealand and from around the world are going to come together to talk about how New Zealand really used to punch above its weight and lead in regards to cancer access, diagnosis, research, and why it's falling so far behind and what could be done to improve that. So Blair presented at the Cancer Crossroads treatment, which is when Blair first effectively kind of came into the media, where he presented at this large conference. And at the time, David Clark was the health minister, and Labor had just campaigned on world-class cancer care for all New Zealanders. And David Clark was sitting in the front row when Blair described his experience of being a 38-year-old diagnosed with terminal cancer in the ED, and then being told that he would basically die waiting on the waiting list unless he could self-fund that private appointment. And it didn't stop there. At the conference, Blair's nurses, 2 of them travelled from Dunedin at no charge to Blair so that he could have his chemo and have his chemo changed out at the conference. So they were able to allow him to be at the conference for 2 days. And the key message that Blair and I learnt from all the experts around the world was that the countries that were doing better than New Zealand had an independent cancer agency that effectively provided advice to the public on what types of treatments should be available, what kind of research, what drugs would be best spent with the money, and also on survival rates. So this independent body effectively had been set up in other countries, which held the governments to account. So as political parties changed, the cancer treatment and outcomes for patients wouldn't. And so Blair said, how do we get a cancer agency? And Chris Jackson said, well, you know, you really have to get the support of the politicians. And so we learned about how to create a cancer petition, and we set up an online petition and in-person petitions. And we rallied support from around the country. People as far away as Northland were out collecting signatures for our cancer petition. I belonged to, well, at the time, belonged to many rural women's network groups to do with our farming and sporting groups, and so did Blair. And basically people across the country supported us with the petition, and we were able to collect the largest number of signatures for any cancer petition in New Zealand, with over 147,000 people supporting us in 8 weeks for the support of a cancer agency. And we were really pleased that a month before Blair died, Jacinda Ardern announced the establishment of a national cancer agency. Unfortunately, it wasn't quite as we had hoped, and being independent and free from government, it is controlled by the Ministry of Health and the Minister of Health. So it doesn't quite have the same independent voice as the other countries, but it has done some incredible work to date. The large amount of drug funding that has been given for cancer treatments has come on the back of a research paper that was provided by the Cancer Agency to the politicians. During COVID, many of the hospitals wanted to shut down cancer care because obviously cancer patients were at risk, but the Cancer Agency insisted that cancer treatment with controls should continue through COVID. So they have done some great work. And I do hope one day it does receive the independent stature that the other countries have. During Blair's treatment with cancer, he really did pack as many things as he could into each week. He ticked off every single bucket list item, including playing a game of rugby with his friends using those brand new knees that he was given. And the rugby game, the simple game of rugby, ended up being one of the most incredible community days that I have personally ever seen. All he wanted was a few friends and his family, and 6,500 people packed our local little community rugby field. There were helicopters flying in with All Blacks, and there were mums baking, and there were people cooking food. And that event not only ticked that list for Blair, but also raised the $80,000 to take those young boys to Australia, which Blair was able to do before he passed. In addition to the rugby game, I was successful in organising the equivalent of a wedding. Blair insisted on it being in Queenstown, and we were very fortunate that his family had a home there, so we could celebrate that special occasion at Blair's family's home with 120 of our closest friends and family. And what a special day to share with our children and our closest friends and family. And then another list, the bucket list just kept growing, and he kept adding things onto the list. And he was very sick in September of 2019. And he said, I don't think these politicians from any of these parties are going to be following through with their promise of equal access to cancer care. And I think you should just get on and build your own hospital. And I thought that he might have had a little bit too much morphine with that suggestion. But I Googled if you are allowed to build your own hospital when you're not a doctor. And I came across a remarkable human called Phil Bagshaw, who obviously established the Canterbury Charity Hospital. And I phoned up Dr. Bagshaw and said, would you mind answering some questions about building a charity hospital. And Phil was very kind and very generous with his time and explained how he'd gone about building a charity hospital for Canterbury and the determination, the difficulties, the challenges, and just how hard it is to build and run a charity hospital. At the end of the conversation, Phil asked if I was a surgeon. When I asked if he would mentor me, and I explained I wasn't a surgeon. He then asked if I was a nurse, and I said no. And so then in his initial offer of help, he said I'd have to come to Christchurch for him to meet me to see if he would mentor me to build the charity hospital and run a hospital. Oh, and nothing sharing?
No.
Oh, okay. I'll try again.
Back.
Can you see now?
Yeah. Yes.
So Phil flew to Invercargill and assisted me with the first public meeting where we invited medical professionals, potential sponsors, and just general concerned members of the community. And we'd hoped to have 20 people turn up across those 3 areas. We were so fortunate that in excess of 150 concerned members of the public, potential donors, and medical professionals came to the first meeting. And following that meeting, the ILT offered to donate the Clifton pub to us, as well as 2 other sites. And a member of the community, Bonish Consulting, assessed all 3 sites to see what would be the best site for the charity hospital. So we were super fortunate that the project got underway, and this is largely credited to Phil's kindness of time. The sharing function, when I share it, turns off the sound, so I'm just trying to manage across both options. A month post that first meeting, unfortunately, Blair died, and on my 40th birthday, we were in Dunedin Hospital, and the doctors said that he was actively dying, and there was no more that could be done for him. And in his true positive state that he'd maintained the entire time, he asked to go home and die at home looking at the Takatimu Mountains. It was probably the most excruciating thing that I've ever been through, with no palliative care options for rural people where we live. So I had to learn how to do the subcut drugs and nurse Blair for 6 days straight, which was just mind-blowing to me that you have to nurse your own person. So I found that extremely difficult without the support of beautiful organisations like hospice, rurally or remotely. In those final days, Blair's positivity did not waver in the slightest. And he said that he really wanted for me to get on and build that hospital, and helping someone was better than not helping anyone. And unfortunately, he had told the media there would be the follow-on announcement meeting prior to us taking him home to die, and it was scheduled for a week post his death. And I was driving into Invercargill, which is 45 minutes away from where we live, and I got halfway, and I hadn't been out of my dressing gown before that day. I'd found it very difficult to function, and I was turning the car around, heading back home when the phone rang, and it was a very good friend of mine who is a local lawyer, Chris Menzies. And Chris said to me, "Missy, you've got a charity hospital meeting tonight." And I said, "Well, I did have, but I'm actually just about to cancel and head home. I just can't face all those people." And he said, "Well, I'm just calling to tell you that one of our clients wants to anonymously donate $200,000 to the charity hospital." And I slapped my leg and I said, "Damn you, Blair Vining, I know this was you." And so I had to pull myself together and head into Invercargill to the meeting. And I just felt in that moment that this impossible bucket list request of building a hospital was so important, and how Blair had faced all that adversity and not once complained and always put others ahead of himself. And this little phone call from this anonymous person really gave me the courage in that moment to honour Blair's wish, and also to do the right thing for our community and head into the meeting. And that little situation of Chris phoning at that exact moment, following the meeting and some weeks later, I asked Chris if he would pass a letter on to the anonymous donor, and I wrote to them explaining how that particular action and that particular moment, when this was a pie in the sky idea, that significant act of kindness really was the catalyst for me to be able to continue with the project in the depths of despair. And if they would be willing, I would just love to meet them in person one day, and just to be able to thank them and understand why they had offered to put that money forward at that particular moment in time before the project was popular or well known. And it turned out that it was a lovely farmer from our Southern community, and his mum had been a nurse at the Southern Hospital for 40 years, and she had left him some money, and he hadn't decided what he wanted to do with that money and had it in the bank for more than 10 years. And when he read about the project, he knew that this project would sit really well with his mum. And so those little things that just keep you going in the hard times. But really for me, they taught me that the greatest gift that we can really have is not what we achieve, but how we touch other people's lives, even if it's quietly. You know, he wanted no recognition. He didn't want anything in return. But his act of kindness towards our charity really gave it the momentum that it needed to get started. And for me, the courage to go and face that big community meeting. Following on from the establishment of the charity hospital that October 2019, the same month that Blair passed, we set out with this vision, and we received just so much support. Obviously, the ILT donating us a building, and the money starting to come in from various donors. And we basically modelled the charity hospital on the Canterbury model. So it was to provide colonoscopies to those that had been declined from the public health system and those that were unable to privately fund a colonoscopy. On visiting the Christchurch Charity Hospital, we also saw just how much need there was for dental. And that was a decision that, again, beautiful acts of kindness from our community came forward. We put out a public proposal to say, we are focused on delivering the colonoscopies in the first instance. However, there's this huge community need for dental. And we received overwhelming support from a number of organisations, and you'd be surprised to learn that a lot of them were women's organisations, where groups of women that were running charitable things, Rural Women's Network, a group of ladies that had managed and looked after a hall in a rural area sold the hall, and they donated the money towards the dental project. Winton Friendship Club, which is a very small group of women that have basically get together once a month and have inspiring speakers, but they got together and helped contribute to the cost of the dental facility so that we were able to have a world-class dental theatre with amazing equipment, and we're able to provide that care exactly the same as the Canterbury Charity Hospital to those that can't access it privately. So the project expanded from colonoscopy to dental with the support of the community. By this stage, it had hit February 2020, so we were 4 months into the project. And I don't know if you recall, but COVID hit at that time. And I certainly did not find that easy being locked up. And we had an incredible governance board for the charity hospital, but they said, we're really sorry, Missy, the project can't continue with COVID. There could be a financial crisis, and there's just no way that we can let this project go ahead when we don't know if we're going to be able to. Sorry, I'll just fix that screen. And if we're going to be able to fund it. And I said, okay, well, how much money would it take for you to let the project continue? And they said, well, there's no way for you to make money. We're all locked down. And I literally cried the entire way home from the board meeting because people needing colonoscopies was not going to stop. And if we were giving colonoscopies, then we could diagnose cancer, and colorectal cancer is so curable if it's caught early. And when I got home, I picked up a little notebook that I had kept notes in from when Blair was in hospital. And in that first conversation, that when I thought he was deranged on morphine, telling me to build a hospital, his comment to me was, if every Southlander bought a brick, we could just build our own hospital and we wouldn't need to worry about the politicians. And then this got me thinking, the building we'd been donated was a beautiful brick building, this old pub. And I thought, I wonder if we could get plaques and screw them to the bricks. So every single person who contributes, because we've already got the bricks, but maybe we could recognize them. Sometimes when you donate to charities, I donate often, and you never really know where your money goes in the charity. And I just really loved this concept of, could I screw something to each brick and recognize all the people that contributed. And so I got home and did some more Googling, and I was just so excited when I found personalized bricks that I could have made in New Zealand. So I didn't need to screw anything to the walls. And I don't know if you can see the screen now, but
Yes.
In May, we launched Buy a Brick for Blair on the Good Morning Show. And we crashed the website for selling the bricks because so many people jumped on and bought a brick to support our project. And I needed to sell 1,000 bricks in order to get the $1 million for the project to continue, to prove to the board that we could do it. And we sold a total of 16,683 bricks. And there are beautiful paths of love all around the charity hospital with the most beautiful messages from people all around the world. Our furthest away brick comes from America, from a firefighting team. And our local volunteers got behind us, and they did a dance video in their fire kit with the police, and they challenged all the other volunteer fire services. They were aiming for New Zealand, but it went global, and we had bricks bought from all over the world. And recently we were lucky enough to have a visitor from that particular fire service in America, and she came to find their brick. And again, more acts of kindness. I want you to picture how hard it is when someone travels from around New Zealand or from another country and says, hi, Melissa, I've got a brick. Can you show me where my brick is? And I can tell you that is not an easy job, but I work for a professional service firm called Findex, and our company gives a volunteer day a year to community projects. So I wrote to my colleagues who were accountants, numbers and spreadsheet type people, and said, guys, I need a system for when people come to find their brick, and I've got instantly to locate a brick. And they came up with the most amazing database. And so it's like kind of like a cemetery in the sense of there's a grid with letters, and you type in and you can find exactly the location and line of where that brick is placed at the charity hospital. So again, all these accountants giving of their time to set up a database and label 16,683 bricks of love. So whenever we have a special visitor, we can locate their beautiful brick. So that was quite an exciting project. And the $1 million was enough to convince the board to be allowed to continue building the project in our community. And when I say our community, I feel like the whole of New Zealand has been our community. We literally had people buying bricks from Northland, where they equally don't have the same access to healthcare as our main city centre like Auckland, Gisborne, Whakatane, Tauranga, Wellington, bricks from all over the country. And then the community started taking on their own fundraising projects. And the charity hospital was built by the community for the community, and the whole entire community just really embodied that for us. These cracker farm wives, 3 of them got together and said that they wanted to help fundraise. And so they launched their own fundraiser called Bales for Blair, and they asked their fellow sheep farmers to donate bales of wool for the project. And their goal was they wanted the entire hospital to be insulated with New Zealand wool. And not only did they achieve getting enough wool from all the farmers because of the generosity of the company that processed the wool into the insulation, they also were able to get us New Zealand wool carpet for our community room. And you can see there an excess amount of money of $78,488 to go towards other products for the charity hospital. 3 farm wives, and they just put their mind together and came up with that campaign and a little go. And they didn't just achieve it, they smashed it with such a big contribution. And the local transport companies helped transport the insulation, which you can imagine these huge big bales of insulation coming all the way from your neck of the woods to our neck of the woods would have been really expensive had the generosity of the transport company not been involved. So that was a pretty special savings for the hospital, but also inspired many other amazing fundraisers that were made from the community. We also, after the first year and achieving our financial goals and coming up to Blair's 1-year anniversary, I spoke to the girls and I was like, how do you even possibly thank an entire community for helping you tick off such a big piece of work? That we'd all been through COVID, businesses were struggling, people were struggling. I mean, people weren't even able to attend funerals. It was a really difficult time. And my eldest daughter, Della, said, you should just celebrate it like Dad would. You should just create some kind of big community event, invite everyone along where it doesn't cost money and just make it fun. And so we decided to have an event to thank the community that was completely free of charge to the community. And it was called Pack the Park. And we put on a massive community rugby game, and a fantastic Southlander, Corey Flynn, who Canterbury people claim is his because he played for the Crusaders, but he is a Southlander. He helped me organise this game of rugby, and the support from former All Blacks, people like Graham Henry, and they were coming to an event that they were not getting paid to come to. We do not live in the easiest part of the world to fly to. Tickets to get to us are very expensive. At the time, it was around $1,000 a person to come to this event to support us. And the community turned out in droves. And right before the rugby game, the entire Southern Rugby Park was completely full of these beautiful smiling faces and people coming together to celebrate their achievement as a community. And Scotty Stevenson, who is a sports commentator, and Graham Henry came and got me, and they said, Missy, you need to go and stand in the middle of this rugby ground and actually take this in. We've been to World Cup games. We've been to like world-class events, and the feeling here is just indescribable, and you need just to pause for a minute and take this in. And I went and stood in the middle of the grounds of a packed out rugby stadium, and there were just these big smiling faces everywhere, and that pride of that community of what they'd achieved, of all coming together, whether they were builders, whether they were plumbers, whether they were farmers, they all came together to get the money together to create that project. And yeah, if you could put that feeling in a bottle, it would be just an absolute treasure to be able to share that feeling with people of everyone working together and achieving such an incredible thing. And many of the people who were contributing would never ever benefit or even have access to the charity hospital, but they were all there for a greater purpose than themselves. And so again, following that thank you to the community just didn't stop. That event was there to help them. And so there was no charge for any of it. We had free autograph books, there was beautiful products, there was all sorts of giveaways for the kids. But the community started collecting with buckets. People just started putting money, and they were passing the buckets along. And at that event, $86,000 was raised. And, people were just, the people who could give, gave. And there was no expectation of cost, or that was not the intent, but what a phenomenal help to the project all over again. In addition to the many events that got created by the community, some of the highlights for myself and the girls were the shoot-a-thon. So a local woman, Andrea, whose stepfather was denied access to colonoscopy 3 times and then was diagnosed terminally ill in the ED in Dunedin, she organised the shoot-a-thon where her and a number of her female colleagues from her local netball club got together, and they set about a genuine Guinness Book record, and everyone shot goals for 24 hours, and they raised in excess of $90,000, as well as still being the current holder for the most amount of goals shot in a 24-hour period. The feeling on the courts while all these women took to the courts to shoot goals was just remarkable. Young and old, the age group that participated in that event was remarkable. But for 24 hours, they shot goals and raised in excess of $90,000. And there's also a share-a-thon where local sharers got together and they broke a world record sharing sheep for 24 hours. And one of the farmers at the event also donated, in addition to what they'd raised from the sharing, $240,000 to replace the extension roof of our charity hospital, which was a major project that we needed to fundraise for. And so we were super fortunate just to have members from all sorts of parts of the community coming together and raising money for us. And for the following year, on Blair's birthday, we had the last $1 million that was needed for equipment. And you can imagine 3 years of extensive fundraising, building with volunteers. It was pretty exhausting. In excess of my real job is quite busy. And I was sort of working the equivalent of just over 2.5 full-time jobs. I also personally respond to every patient that contacts us. And so I have windows of time between 9 p.m. and 11 normally when I respond individually to cancer patients from around the country. So we had this last leg to go, and I was like, I'm really out of fundraising ideas. I don't think I can make $1 million worth of cheese rolls. I'm just at a loss. And this amazing group of girls that are my events, marketing and funding committee, the same little group of women, there's 5 of us in total. That comment that Graham Henry and Scotty made about being at world-class events, they all thought that we had this big fancy event organising team, but it's 5 of us that run all the events, plan them, organise them, market them. And so I got Nikki Bridie and the events team together, and I said, guys, we've got one final push. We need to make $1 million. How could we do it? And they were like, oh, that's a lot. But anyway, we talked for a while, and it was sort of a few weeks to Blair's birthday, and we decided everything that we've done to try and celebrate around Blair has worked particularly well and resonated. So we raffled off a Ford Mustang. So Blair was a big Ford fan, and so we did win a Mustang. And we were really lucky. The local Ford shop gave us the Ford Mustang at cost price. And so we were able to sell tickets all around New Zealand and raise $500,000 from raffling off Win a Mustang. And it was an exceptionally successful project where the 5 of us could run that project and raise that half of that $1 million towards the equipment that we needed for the hospital. So, just a nice, simple fundraiser. We learnt about all the Department of Internal Affairs things that we had to do. And again, we talk about those little random acts of kindness that occur that have really kept me going throughout the project. The tickets were $100 each, so it's a very expensive raffle ticket. And I could see that the raffle tickets were being bought all over New Zealand. So I could see each ticket and where they were being purchased. And the rock radio station flew to Invercargill to draw the live draw for giving away the Mustang. And I thought, imagine if some very wealthy person from Auckland won this car. Like, my heart would be a little bit sad. I wish I could pick the person. And just FYI, it was all done legitimately through Department of Internal Affairs. But that was the thought in my head when I saw like 20 tickets going to one very generous person in Auckland. I was like, imagine if that's the person that wins the car. Anyway, on the morning of the giveaway, the Mustang, it's all drawn officially with the police, and I get the ticket, and the radio station rings up the winner live, and I'm on the call, and the person goes, "Hello," and I go, "Hi, it's Melissa from the charity hospital. You've won a Mustang." And he's like, "What?" And I was like, "Oh, he doesn't sound very excited." And as it turned out, this beautiful man who won the Mustang was a minimum hourly rate night shift worker at the Southern Hospital. And so my heart just melted. He told us the story live on the radio about he didn't pay his Netflix bill so that he could buy that ticket. He didn't have enough money for a ticket, and he saw that it was for the charity hospital. So he transferred the Netflix bill payment money out of his account and bought this ticket to support the charity hospital. Never in his wildest dreams did he think that he would actually win the Mustang. And it was just the most I felt like I won a Mustang. Like, it was better than me winning a Mustang. This man that worked in the hospital, and the floods of stories that came in from doctors and nurses about how deserving this man was of that car was, I just cannot describe. Giving away stuff is way better than receiving stuff in my mind. And he was just so overjoyed to get that car. And he did lots of great things with children in the community, taking kids to the ball and everything before he sold the car to get a deposit on his first home. So, here he was doing an act of kindness, buying $100 ticket to support our project. And his generosity resulted in him winning this car and getting his first home. So it was pretty special. I could talk all night about the various projects that our community has done to raise money for the charity hospital, but a couple of challenging ones have put me in some really uncomfortable positions. So I'm a terrible public speaker, and I often have to go and speak at events. So I've had to do things that are definitely, I curse Blair regularly because he loved chatting and telling a speech at the rugby club, whereas I preferred to be in the kitchen doing the jobs and behind the scenes. But also another fabulous fundraiser, which actually helped me in more ways than I ever imagined, but scared me to death along the way, was I had to participate in a dancing competition called Rocking with the Stars, which is like Dancing with the Stars on TV. And so basically, local personalities are paired with professional dancers, and you learn to dance in 6 weeks, and then you have to perform in front of 1,500 people, and the money raised from the event goes to the chosen charity. And so I had to learn to dance, which was something I had never done before. And I was paired with a 24-year-old who did not understand that in your 40s that you don't have abs, and getting thrown in the air and was quite a challenge. But dancing training every day was incredibly good. I actually ended up loving it, and certainly did things that I never thought I could possibly do. And my girls were just so proud of the physical effort that it required to do that dancing and be thrown around. And Joe, my dance partner, was exceptionally patient and good. And I was very proud to win the Rocking with the Stars. And that community event raised in excess of $100,000 for the charity hospital. So my 6 weeks worth of dancing, a pulled ab muscle, which I didn't even know you could get pulled ab muscles when you don't have abs, resulted in a whole lot of fun, lots of laughs, being out of my comfort zone, but also a phenomenal fundraiser for the charity hospital. So that's kind of some of the adventures that we had in building the charity hospital. And obviously we built with volunteers, which was quite challenging in itself. And now we have a beautiful community asset. This is the community lounge with the wool that was donated, the wool carpet that was donated by our lovely farming community. And I'm going to show you the theatre, because this is something that was I think one of our proudest achievements is having surgeons from all around New Zealand come and comment on just how amazing our theatre is. So basically, we've got an operating theatre that can do any day procedures. We do our own sterilisation at the hospital, and a large amount of that $1 million that we needed for equipment largely fits in that room. So all of our equipment for colonoscopies and sterilisation all in the theatre. We have a beautiful recovery room that is really well equipped with all brand new equipment, and the nurses really contributed to the layout and what equipment to choose. So a beautiful recovery room with 4 trauma beds and 3 surgical recliners. Generally, a list for us is 8 to 10 patients per day on colonoscopy list days. That's how many we can get through. And probably one of the craziest things is when we started out with this project, obviously, I just wanted to tick off Blair's final wish and, really try to make a meaningful difference so other families wouldn't be in that same position as us if they got diagnosed early. At the time when Blair died, Lily, my youngest, was 12 years old and Delamate was 17. And Blair was an amazing father and really involved with the girls. So learning to be a single mum, juggling my professional job and building the hospital was far bigger than I could ever have imagined. And I think my optimistic personality of 12 months to build a hospital was seriously undercooked. But probably one of the most happiest, proudest moments of my community was on the 28th of February when we had the grand opening of the charity hospital and got to celebrate with the many, many volunteers and donors, and cutting that ribbon and opening the doors was fantastic. The kindness didn't stop there. We had to have a full surgical team to complete the first patients list, and we were really, really fortunate by another incredible human, Professor Frank Frizzell. And Frank is based in Christchurch and has a private practice there. He also previously for many years worked in the public health system, and he volunteers at the Canterbury Charity Hospital. And I rang Frank and said, "Hey Frank, I was just wondering if you could come to Invercargill and be our surgeon to help us get going," and thinking that he would be like, "You're crazy. I'm very busy in my private practice. I'm the head of the Bowel Cancer Foundation. I'm a researcher." And he said, I'd be delighted to come and help. Immediately said yes. And without him getting that started, it would have been really hard to get those first checks underway, get the audits complete, and help those first patients. I was so lucky to be there on the first list day. Obviously, I don't have any clinical expertise to bring to the table, and I certainly don't want to crowd the patients or the clinicians, but sitting there with that first lot of patients and hearing the distress that they'd been under, the different stories for people. One woman was 28 years old, and that's the age that my daughters will require to start having colonoscopies. Her mother had died of colorectal cancer, and because she was under 50, she couldn't get access to a colonoscopy, and she'd been saving $15 per week. That's what she could afford out of her pay to try and access a private colonoscopy. And she tried to give us the $700 and something that she had saved towards the colonoscopy, and just the tears streaming down her face at being there and being able to access that care just made all of those years of hardship of trying to do this, just that one interaction was enough for me. I was just like, wow, this is exactly why we're doing this. It's been incredible helping patients, and many of our patients have actually become volunteers. There was a beautiful dental patient who had brain cancer, and as a result of her treatment, she had significant damage to her teeth, and the care wasn't covered in the public system, and she couldn't afford the care to have her teeth repaired as a result of the damage from the radiation. And she's been unable to work as a result of her cancer, so she's on a benefit. We helped her well, when I say we, our amazing dental team gave her 4 different sessions to get her dental ready, where her teeth are all fully repaired. And she's now back in part-time employment, paid employment, and she volunteers 1 day a week in the cleaning team at the charity hospital. And we've said to her there is no payback required. That was not part of it. And she's like, if I could do something like dental or medical, I would want to give back, because what you've done for me is not only obviously fix my teeth, but it's given me the confidence to be able to obtain employment and get back to work. And that social interaction and work has been really important for my mental health and recovery. So it is the gift that keeps on giving. It's been one of the biggest privileges of my life to get to see, I feel like, the most amazing humans, from the people who generously donate to the medical volunteers who give up their time when they've got such big stressed jobs, to the builders, the farmers, the plumbers, the bricklayers, to just the cheerleaders, the people who take the time to send a card now and again to say how amazing the team is that are providing those services. It has truly been a privilege to be able to see all of those amazing acts of kindness and generosity during a very difficult time for myself personally and for my children. So definitely feel very fortunate. And I thought I'd leave you with a couple of things. One, people often think that I'm advocating for there to be a need for a charity hospital. I personally think it is an absolute disgrace that New Zealand requires charity hospitals. I feel we all pay taxes and there should be equitable basic healthcare for everybody in New Zealand. I don't think we can afford every type of fancy cancer treatment that are out there, but when there are proven life-saving cancer treatments that are available in the 19 comparable OECD countries, I think it's despicable that Kiwis have to mortgage and sell their homes. I think access to diagnostics when you can be cured of cancer is not only morally right, from a financial aspect, it's far cheaper to diagnose early and treat with surgery than it is to deal with chemo and radiation and palliative care. So I certainly don't actually support the need for charity hospitals. I think it's disgraceful. My wish for our country is that regardless of what political party is in power, that health is not a political football and that there is access to fair healthcare across New Zealand, regardless of where you live, how old you are, or whether you have money or not. So I'm hoping that in building the charity hospital and collecting data and contributing to Phil Bagshaw's research on unmet need across the country, that we can advocate for healthcare to be funded appropriately in New Zealand. I also researched why there is no legal consequence to politicians, regardless of what party. In my professional work, I work in the space of health and safety and employment law, and I largely investigate workplace fatalities. And when an employer has one person die in their workplace, they can be fined up to $3 million. The owners of that company can face criminal charges. So it was very difficult for me to understand 150 people a year dying on waiting lists because they live in Southland and Otago and there's no consequence to anybody, no one liable for that. And I learned about the Health and Disability Act and the Health and Disability Commissioner, and I wrote a complaint on behalf of our region, being Southland and Otago, and I wrote the stories of all the patients that I had interacted with and then got medical data under an official information request verifying the patients that had been harmed or died as a result of not receiving care on time. And I'm very proud to say that in the second only ever commissioner-led inquiry, the Health and Disability Commissioner did investigate the inadequate care that Southland and Otago cancer patients were receiving and verified that 147 patients in that year had received inadequate care that led to either incurable disease or death. And she wrote a series of recommendations to improve access to cancer care. So I have been trying to keep making a difference at a systems level in terms of that space. I've also set up an additional charity with a very dear friend of mine who's also a young widow who lost her husband to colorectal cancer. And it is called Hope Without Fear. And there's an incredible researcher called Professor Parry Guilford, who was the cancer researcher who found Stan Walker's family cancer genes. That means that they're able to be diagnosed with that genetic disorder and have their stomachs removed to prevent cancer. And Parry has got a ctDNA test that means that people could have a blood test at their GP that he's working on, and the blood test would diagnose colorectal cancer. And he's one of the most world-renowned cancer researchers. He's also the recipient of the Prime Minister's Science Award for his contribution to cancer research. So I'm trying to find ways to reduce the number of colonoscopies that are required in our country, and trying to find other ways to diagnose colorectal cancer nice and early. It has been a busy few years, and that is the end of my little story.
Thank you, Melissa. What a Trojan you are, and what an amazing human being you are. And I think Blair's positivity, his braveness, and just being so driven, you have taken hold of and carried on for him, and it's been amazing. And the work that you've done, and I'm interested that you only got 5 people in your team for organising all the fundraising and things, which shows you that you don't need a whole group of people, that 5 probably is a good team and enough to get the job done. And I love the one about your dancing. That's into what you do to to raise some money and to get people to take notice is amazing. I remember myself taking notice when Blair was playing in that rugby game and followed that quite closely. So, and probably lots of other women on the screen might have remembered that time as well, because it was New Zealand wide, really, wasn't it? Probably all over the world. So thank you for sharing you and your daughter's journey. And I accept that it hasn't been easy, but you are just a very, very special woman. And we are very lucky to have met you, and wish you all the best as you move forward. And whatever, well, you're going to stick with what you're doing, but whatever you pick up and run with in the next few years. So thank you.
Thank you for having me, everybody.